we have a guest today or tonight. We have Coco coming to say hi to us for chapter 10. I misspoke at the end of the last one. It wasn't the end of chapter 8. It was the end of chapter 9, Tilly was. So this chapter, I wanted to show you guys a picture from last chapter that I didn't show you. Let's see, it's of the aviator acting like Tilly and Leander flirting with Tilly. So I thought you might want to see that. I didn't share it, and I'm sorry about that. I'll be better. Let me see. Okay, so the next chapter is called The Red Tag that we're going to be reading. So if you remember where we left off, Uncle Cor and Tilly, or Charles, were catching a ride to Leyden with Leander, the bad guy, but he didn't know that he was helping them get away. And they're underdivers. In other words, they're underground. They're hiding, like they're trying to hide from the bad guys. But they were hiding in plain daylight at that point, right? So that's where we left off. So chapter 10 is called The Red Tag. Are you guys ready for this? And let me see here. The Red Tag. Uncle Cor had arranged to send word of his safe arrival by windmill telegraph, for windmills have always had their own language. In the old days, when Catholics were persecuted in Holland, a white rag tied to the wing of a windmill showed that a priest had come to say mass. When a mill is at rest, its wings form a St. Andrew's cross, the position least likely to attract lightning. Traveling millwrights know that a mill needs repair when the cross is crooked. On a feast day, or when there's a birth or a wedding in the family, the wings of the mill form an upright cross, leaning slightly to the right. That's the joy position. A leaning of the wings to the left indicates sorrow. Uncle Cor had told his sister to look in the direction of Leyden at 3 o'clock on Monday afternoon, and if the Jonkterveen Polder mill stood at joy, all would be well with Charles and himself. That is exactly what happened. The Verhagen family breathed easily again. So when they looked at 3 o'clock, the mill that was far, far away, they could see the wings of it aimed the right direction. So I'm going to try to show you a picture really quick. First of all, I'm going to show you the one in the book. And again, watch out for the light for a minute. Sorry, you guys. Give it a minute. So there are the mills. See, so depending on how the wings were turned on, it told you what was going on, if there was happy news or sad news. And I'm going to see if I can't pull up a photo really quick in Holland of a windmill for you guys. I should have done this sooner, and I should have shared it with you guys much sooner. Okay, so here we go. Give it just a minute. Okay, so they live down inside, and the windmill on them is what turns them, what they would send their signals with, their telegraph. Okay, so that's exactly what happened. So it was put in the position of, like, the windmill was turned into the position that it was joy. It was saying that joy was to be had, that in other words, they got away, and that they got there with Leander not finding out who they were. So that was good news. Okay, so that's exactly what happened. The Verhagen family breathed easily again. It had been upsetting to see Uncle Cor and Charles abducted on Leander's motorbike. The day after was Mad Tuesday. Dutch people will forever remember that crazy, improbable first Tuesday in September of 1944 when rumors flew around that the war was over and the liberators were marching into Holland. Whence those rumors came? No one knew, but even the Germans believed them. They hastily packed up and left, and land watchers and other traders disappeared from the streets. Housewives searched their trunks for flags and orange streamers, which they hung out of their windows, but it was a false alarm. The Germans returned, and the land watchers strutted about again, determined to enjoy their power while it lasted. In Soderwald, school had started. There was a conspicuous gap in Dirk Jan's class when Ernst Polder sat, where Ernst Poot sat. Remember, he got taken with his dad for helping the other aviators. Glances straight to the ink-stained desk on which he had carved his name. After school, the boys stood talking in groups. My father says that the Schneiderhans fellow is a menace, growled Ari Koren, a son of one of the wealthiest farmers in the Rhine-Soder-Polder. He and his motorbike. I hear he's looking for a fourth aviator to betray now, as if 3 weren't enough. I think we should keep our eyes on Leendert, said Dirk Jan. We should find out what he is doing and warn people. Exactly my opinion, said Engel de Vries. Let's go to my house to discuss it. The boys moved off. Meanwhile, Joris stood transfixed before a poster which had been pasted on the wall of the burgomaster's house. The others had not noticed it. 2 dog owners, it said. The German army is in need of dogs. All dog owners must bring their pets to the football field on Saturday of this week. Dogs useful to the army will be accepted. Rejected dogs will get a red tag. Dogs who do not have such a tag will be shot. That meant Freya. The Germans would be sure to want her. She was quite big now and very strong and beautiful. If Joris did not bring her, she would be shot. Either way, he would lose her, and never, never, never would he find a dog like her again. Perhaps this had happened because he had not really prayed lately. Perhaps if he had went to church now and prayed very hard, God would forgive him and save Freya. God always forgives you when you're sorry. He's being kind of silly with that thought, right? We do pray, but God's not like, I'm going to punish you for not praying, so I'm going to do this. The church was cold and empty. Few candles burned. They were getting too scarce. Only the red light flickered before the altar. Joris stumbled into the pew. He wanted to pray, but all he could think of was Freya. Freya waiting to go for a walk, her head to one side, her ears cocked. Freya hiding from her bath, creeping under the table and unable to keep her tail from wagging when she heard Joris's steps. So the thump of the floor betrayed her. Freya lying before the stove like a lovely hearthrug, her paws twitching in her sleep. There was no end to the pictures Joris saw. At last, he just put his head on the pew and sobbed. My dear child, said a voice, and he felt Father Kobus's hand on his head. What is the trouble? Bad news at home? There was real concern in his voice. Such cruel things happened every day. The Germans are going to take away our dog, sobbed Joris. She'll have to go to Germany and I'll never see her again. Dear, dear. The priest was stroking Joris's head. There was a note of relief in his voice. The news was not as tragic as it might have been. But when he looked at Joris's tear-stained face, he realized that it was a serious matter all the same. I don't understand God, Joris went on rebelliously. Why doesn't he stop the Germans? Why does he let them go on and on doing awful things to people when he is almighty and could stop them? Here was a theological problem. Father Kobus sat down to it. Here was a theological problem that Father Kobus could sit down to, so he could talk to him about this. He could have a chat. Pushing in the pew beside Joris, how would you like God to stop them, he asked. He could kill them all, said Joris fiercely. There was a silence. Joris heard his own words echo through the church, and they frightened him. You mean you want God to kill all the fathers and mothers, the babies, the little girls, the boys, the grandfathers, the artists, the people who make songs, just because they're German? Father Kobus asked it gently. It was Joris's own argument used against him. No, he said hastily. I did not mean that. Then what do you expect God to do? Well, he could kill Hitler and all those awful people who started the war, argued Joris, and not give them the chance to be sorry, to save their souls, asked Father Kobus. Joris had not thought about that. In books, you were always pleased when the villains were killed, but God would worry about their souls. He saw that. Well, asked Father Kobus, Joris had to admit that that was out too. Could he not at least make the Allies win? Joris asked. He will, the priest assured him. They are winning, but it won't solve anything for long. Wars never do. The evil is inside and has to be conquered inside. That is where God works. It is in your heart that the Lord will conquer. Joris sighed. He did not think God was making such headway in his heart. Look what he had just been wishing. Then there is another thing, said Father Kobus. If God interfered too much with us, we would not be free. You have a dog. Would you like it if she only followed you when you dragged her by a rope? Joris's eyes lit up. She doesn't, he cried. She follows me because she wants to. She looks for me when I'm away. She watches after me when I go to school with her front paws on the windowsill. And once, when I had a cold and couldn't go out, she lay at the foot of my bed all day long. Joris's triumphant voice rang through the church. Hush, child, hush, said Father Cobus, smiling a little. I can see that your dog loves you. And it is the way that God wants us to love him. He wants us to follow him out of our own free will. Will he not do a little miracle then to save Freya? Asked Joris humbly. The priest smiled again. I'll make a personal request to him, he promised. Joris's spirits lifted. If a holy person like Father Cobus asked for a miracle, God was sure to give it to him. Consoled, he thanked Father Cobus and ran all the way home. Meanwhile, Dirk Jan and his friends had left the doctor's house, where they had had a conference about Leendert. Rena had been present, looking stronger. The upshot of the conference had been that the boys had resolved to take turns watching Leendert as much as they could. Now they passed the burgomaster's house and noticed the message to dog owners. Oh, said Engel, they're never satisfied, are they? They've taken our copper, our silver, our bicycles, our food, our radios, and now they want our pets? They'll take Freya, murmured Dirk Jan. It will break Joris's heart. Can't we hide her? No, not with Leendert around. He'll notice if we didn't bring her. But if she has a red tag, mused Engel. Wait a minute. I think I've got an idea. They won't want our Flip. He's too old. What if you took him instead and so got a red tag for Freya? On Saturday, the football field was transformed into a scene of tragedy. Children and adults parting from their pets. German officers sat on a platform under an enormous red banner with a black swastika on it. Swastika. One by one, aged people brought shivering little lapdogs, the last comfort of their lives. Luckily, the German army did not want small dogs. The old ladies went off rejoicing with their red tags. All the bigger dogs were taken except a few who had physical defects. A farmer parted from his sturdy bulldog with such grief that even the German officers had tears in their eyes, but they took the dog all the same. However, they said kind words to the farmer in broken Dutch, telling him how noble it was to serve the unconquerable German army and how glad he should be that his dog was chosen for such a glorious mission. The farmer made a rude noise in his throat and spat on the ground. So the parade went on. Dogs came not only from neighboring farms, but from villages quite a distance away. Dirk Jan led poor old Flip by a string and waited in line. Then he ducked because he saw Leendert Schneiderhans ahead with Nero. He knew Dirk Jan was not bringing in the Wehrhagen's dog. Now Leendert was dragging the unwilling Nero before the German judges. They praised the beautiful dog and clapped Leendert on the shoulder. Dirk Jan guessed that Hendrik had refused to bring the dog himself. He could very well imagine how Hendrik must have pleaded with Leendert to use his influence with the Germans to let him keep his pet. But Leendert wouldn't care. All he wanted was to be in favor with the Nazis. When Leendert had delivered Nero, he did not leave. He stayed with the officers, feeling like he was one of them. It was clear the officers didn't like it, but they didn't tell him to go away. Leendert was useful to them. Dirk Jan wished that they had sent him away. It was most awkward having Leendert there. Dirk Jan looked behind him. There was a long queue. If he lost his place, he might never get a turn again. It was better to risk going on. So Dirk Jan ventured forth with Flip and marched before the judges. Poor Flip could hardly stand up and was greeted with yells of derision. The vet did not even bother to examine him, but flung a red tag at Dirk Jan with the remark that the German army was not going to pay for Dog's funeral. Dirk Jan was happily picking up the tag when Schneiderhans interfered. That's not the boy's dog. It does not belong to him, he told the vet in extremely bad German. So what, said the vet. I don't care who it belongs to. I don't want the old carcass. But don't you see? Leendert fell over his words in order to explain quickly. It's the doctor's dog he has, not his own. Donnerwetter, shouted the vet, getting angry. I do not want this dog. Do you hear? I don't want him. Take him away. He glared at Dirk Jan, who grabbed Flip under his arm and ran off, amazed at this incredible piece of good luck. And you too, thundered the vet at Leonard, interfering lump of clumsy Dutchman. Do you think the German army is a home for broken down animals? Leonard slunk away. At the Watchman, a radiant Joris tied the red tag to Freya's collar, believing most firmly in the efficacy of Father Cobus's prayers. And that is the end of chapter 10. So next time it's chapter 11 and it is Koba and Betsy. But until then, my sweets, I will see you all later.